When you hear the word digipen, the first game that should come to mind is Portal, the critically acclaimed puzzle shooter of 2007. It's common knowledge at this point, but that game started out as a small project made by students at Digipen Institute of Technology, and it was initially called Narbacular Drop. If there's ever any other game that I would associate with that university, it would have to be this free game I did a video on about a year ago called Nitronic Rush. It's an eclectic, colorful, and challenging vehicle platformer also developed by Digipen students. Those same people would go on to form Refract Studios, who made the game I want to talk about today, especially while it's still on sale. Distance was initially released in early access in 2014, followed by a Steam release in 2018, as well as a PS4 and 5 release 6 years later. If you've ever played Nitronic Rush, which you should because it's awesome and free, the gameplay in Distance will be very familiar. This isn't your typical racing game. There are no opponents, no apexes to memorize, no gear ratios to tweak, just a car and a track. What keeps this from being dull is what your car can do. I describe both Nitronic Rush and Distance as vehicle platformers because that's really what you're doing in these games. Your car can jump, boost, and even fly in certain levels. Each of these moves is limited in some way to create an interesting movement-based challenge. For example, jumping gives you the same height each time, but you don't always want to go too high. That means that you might have to jump a little early, so that you're already descending by the time an airborne obstacle approaches. You also can't boost forever. Holding down the boost button for too long will make you overheat and eventually explode. The only way to boost continuously is to perform tricks to cool you down. You do this using your car's thrusters. Instead of a traditional trick system with pre-animated front and back flips, everything in Distance is physics-based. You use your thrusters to twist and rotate your car in the air so that you accumulate enough score to cool yourself down upon landing. Finally, flying comes in handy when you miss a jump, but you don't always have access to it. In fact, I'd say that most of the initial campaign doesn't let you fly. Personally, I find the flight mechanic a little too situational, and I often forget I even have the ability to begin with. This is something that Nitronic Rush handled a bit better. In that game, you had your wings available a lot more often, but you were still discouraged from abusing them since you move much slower in the air, and that game was all about setting fast track times. The way the car handles will definitely take a bit of getting used to. There's a certain floatiness to your jumps, yet turning is incredibly grippy. You have to be aware of that twitch factor when avoiding obstacles. Tracks in Distance are laid out like Hot Wheels sets. There's twists, jumps, loops, and giant saw blades. While you generally want to have these tracks memorized, I think their distinct visual styling and strong association with certain abilities of your car make it possible to get by on reflex alone. Anytime you see a wide gap and you're not allowed to fly, you use your boost to fly over it. If you see a sideways piece of road with barriers that you have to jump over, that means you gotta use your thrusters to twist your car in midair and glue yourself to the vertical surface. If you see something that you have to jump over, but then a spiky barrier gets in your way, that means you have to jump and then immediately activate all of your thrusters at once in order to launch the car back down to the road. If I had even a single complaint about the track design, it would actually have to be two things. One thing I don't like is how often the game relies on you just driving in a straight line. What is this, Sonic Unleashed? Another thing, due to how the camera adjusts itself when you're sideways or upside down, I find myself losing my point of reference, misjudging my next move. I think more variety in the environmental design might help with this. Other than that, tracks and Distance are very deliberately crafted to challenge you in a focused sort of way. The main campaign stages do have a bad habit of going into a pseudo cutscene mode when you don't really have much control, but on the whole, there's a lot of fun to be had navigating these obstacle courses. If I had to give an early impression of the difficulty in Distance, I think it's, at least on average, lower than that of Nitronic Rush. I understand why this is done. The developers basically treated the adventure mode campaign like an extended tutorial. As you would expect, levels found in the additional campaigns and game modes are much more challenging, especially the ones made by the community as opposed to Refract themselves. Thanks to the frequent checkpoints, I can't say that the experience in Distance ever becomes outright frustrating. There are certainly moments when I ask myself, how the crap am I supposed to predict that? But generally, the track designs telegraph their flow well enough that nothing should catch you off guard. I want you to keep in mind that I got this game on sale for only 2.5 freedom currency. That would be 4 where I live. I think I did myself a solid with that because the amount of content on offer is incredible. While the main adventure campaign is only 2 hours long, you do get 2 additional campaigns, one of which pays homage to Nitronic Rush, as well as a ton of arcade maps and a near infinite supply of community-made levels. It goes without saying that being a game with Steam Workshop support, you're gonna be here for a while. Some of the post-game levels are really unique too. There's this one where you play it like it's Micro Machines, or a level where you have to collect rings in an open area. The versatility of this seemingly simple game foundation is most impressive. Not only do you have access to a level editor, but you even get a random track generator that creates seeds using keywords. It's nothing groundbreaking, and I doubt it incorporates the kind of technology we have now for generating content, but it's still a neat bonus. Looking at the presentation of Distance, it's one of those odd cases where I can't really make up my mind on it fully. On one hand, I really like the bright and colorful look of Nitronic Rush. Honestly, even the levels taken from that game don't look quite the same in this new game engine. But on the other hand, I can't deny that the visual polish has seen a boost. Color grading, post-processing, texture quality, it's all great. There's a particular minimalist quality to the presentation that works well in creating that desolate atmosphere. The only parts of Distance I feel don't look too hot are the outdoor environments. The world just looks a bit too empty in these areas. The sky lacks detail, and you can really tell that the art direction was made with that dark, dystopian sci-fi look in mind. The sound design is wonderful. Nothing sounds organic, or how should I say, pleasant in any way. There's this harshness and distortion to everything that really drives home just how messed up the situation is, wherever this game is supposed to take place. There does appear to be some sort of story, something about computer malware taking over a futuristic artificially created world, but there's not a lot to it. I think the way the paper thin narrative is conveyed is the real strength here. Nothing is ever clear. You only occasionally hear these announcements and cryptic codes communicated in the background as you're playing. It does a good enough job at conveying what I like to call pseudo-mystery. You know, when a game tries to seem like there is so much more going on behind the scenes, but it's really just there to support the overall impression of the presentation. The music is entirely electronic, although it doesn't really sound like the kind of drum and bass that you might expect. There's a lot of tension in the compositions, and nothing ever sounds bright or overly energetic. Also, this is just a personal thing, but I can't stand the kick drum sound a lot of these songs use. It's way too clicky. It feels like it takes up more of the high mids than where the kick drum is supposed to live. Otherwise, the soundtrack is integrated expertly into the soundscape, with each section of the track applying slightly different equalization to the frequency range and certain instruments dropping out completely for dramatic effect. Distance is clearly a very passionately developed game that has one goal in mind and gets it done well. All killer, no filler. If you're gonna play Distance, please don't think of the first adventure mode campaign as the entire experience. There's so much more to play. From the throwback levels to the arcade maps, community levels, and random generation, you've got a whole lot of playtime ahead of you, all wrapped around a slick presentation and vacuum-tight controls. I still regret not getting this game back when it was in early access. It was even good back then too. Be sure to subscribe and support the show in the description below.